Well, hello everybody. Greg Cumming here from Good News for Israel. And we're going to take 5 and Salah again. And that just simply means just to pause and consider. That's what the Hebrew word means. So today we're continuing our story about Bethel, or Bethel. And we've got to the point where Jacob was escaping from Esau and heading towards Haran on the very first day he made it from Beersheba to the mountain east of Luz, where Abram had originally pitched his tent generations earlier and had built an altar to the Lord. And he set a stone at his head and he went to sleep, and he had an amazing dream, and he saw a stairway leading from earth to heaven. Angels were ascending and descending upon it, and at the top he saw God, or the Hebrew word is Adonai. And I believe it was a pre-appearance of Jesus. The Lord spoke and confirmed the covenant that he'd made with Abram and promised that this would apply to Jacob and his descendants. So just note that this covenant was not made with Ishmael, Abram's eldest son, nor was it made with Esau, who was Isaac's eldest son, but with God's sovereign choice, which was, of course, Jacob, Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And after the Lord had spoken with Jacob, he woke up, and all his life he'd heard about the Lord from his grandfather Abram, and from his father Isaac, and from his mother Rebekah. But on this night was the first time he really discovered the Lord for himself. Interestingly enough, the movies portray, Bible commentaries sometimes portray him as a very young man. But in fact, he was 77 years old. Maybe he did look young, but that's how old he was. And Genesis 28 and verse 16 says, "Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, 'Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it.'" Remember, Abram had really discovered the Lord when he was about 75 years old. And so Jacob's spiritual journey begins here, as it does for all of us when we discover the Lord. And for each of us, it occurs at a different age and a different stage of life. And as long as we've not hardened our heart to the Lord, he begins to develop the relationship between us. Genesis 28 verse 17 says, "And he was afraid and said, 'How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven.' Then Jacob arose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it." So he was so impacted that he stood the stone he had placed near his head, and he made it a memorial. Notice it's a memorial, not an altar. With nothing to sacrifice on it, he poured out the only thing he had with him that could be poured, and it was his bottle of oil. And so this was his memorial, Jacob's memorial. And remember, a memorial is not an altar. So later, memorial stones or pillars were set up by Moses and Joshua, and memorials because when people walked past and saw them, they would question why the memorial stone was set up. That's what a memorial is. Exodus 28 verse 9 explains it when it says, "You shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. 6 of their names on one stone, 6 names on the other stone in order of their birth, with the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet. You shall engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel, and you should set them in settings of gold. And you shall put the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel, you should set them on the shoulders of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. So Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders as a memorial." Slightly different memorial stones to what Jacob set up. These were ones that were on the shoulders of the breastplate, and the whole ephod, etc. of the high priest. But here's one that's similar. It's Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 2. "It shall be on the day when you cross over the Jordan," Moses speaking to Joshua, "to the land which the Lord your God is giving you, that you shall set up for yourselves large stones and whitewash them with lime. And you shall write on them all the words of the law when you've crossed over, that you may enter the land which the Lord your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord God of your fathers promised you. Therefore it shall be, when you've crossed over the Jordan, that on Mount Ebal, that you shall set up these stones which I command you today, and you shall whitewash them with lime, and there you shall build an altar to the Lord your God, an altar of stones. You shall not use an iron tool on them. So these were memorial stones. Remember, they're not altars. And Joshua chapter 4 verse 9 says, Then Joshua set up the 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood. And there they are to this day. So that's an example of memorial stones that were set up, in the journey of the Israelites from Egypt through to the Promised Land. But back to the Jacob on the mountain east of Luz. Can you just picture this? There alone on that very significant mountain, the sun just coming up across the mountains on the other side of the Jordan Valley, and here's Jacob raising up the stone pillar. His thoughts are very much on the incredible dream that he just had where he had met the Lord. And then he looks around for something to sacrifice, and he finds the oil, and he pours the oil on the top of the stone pillar, and then he takes a step back, and maybe he gets on his knees, and he looks up to heaven. And there are a few decisions to be made by Jacob that will impact us even to this day. So 20 years later, Jacob would pass through here again with his large family and all of his possessions, and he would pause and erect another memorial stone to commemorate the faithfulness of the Lord. In actual fact, on this case, it was going to be an altar. So do you have any memorials? Things that remind you of things that the Lord has done for you. Reminders of his faithfulness to you. How about things like the Lord's Supper? Or how about the Lord's festivals? How about the Shabbat, the Sabbath? Or do you have something more personal that reminds you of a miracle that he's done in your life? Why not tell us about it? Well, that's it from me today. The Lord richly bless you, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next Take 5 and Selah. God bless you. Bye for now.